Hello, so today I'm going to be having a look at not my choices but the choices of a certain website which we've looked at before for the best and the worst of Terry Pratchett, or specifically the Discworld series because he did write other stuff. And there are in total 41 Discworld books, and this is the list of them. And the person that created this list on Goodreads has not really put them in any sort of order. So I had to go through and all of them, and I have looked through and found which ones have been voted overall the best and which ones have been voted overall the worst. And we'll start with the worst. And the worst is a book called Eric, or Faust crossed out Eric. And that scored an average of 3.76, which is pretty poor because Goodreads doesn't tend to vary too much. It tends to be sort of 3.5 to sort of 4.2 on average because most people kind of go, yeah, I enjoyed it, and like 3 or 4 stars. And that's, why when I've looked at it before, like the very worst that you tend to see is sort of in the low 3s. Occasionally you'll see something in the 2s, but you very rarely see something that's much more than sort of 4.5. But there are a few Discworld books I think that did score above there. But anyway, Eric scored 3.76, and the plot description that it gives us is the Discworld's only demonology hacker, Eric, is about to make life very difficult for the rest of Ankh-Morpork's denizens. This would-be Faust is very bad at his work, that is. All he wants is to fulfill 3 little wishes: to live forever, to be master of the universe, and to have a hot wife or girlfriend. But Eric isn't even good at getting his own way because instead of summoning a powerful demon, he conjures up the wizard that we've seen from all the other books, Rincewind, and he's generally incompetent, and his incompetence kind of matches up with Eric's. But not only that, is like they're constantly pursued through the whole book by the luggage that has been following from the very first book. What you find is, as with Faust, is the wishes that Eric makes he doesn't quite get. Not quite what he wants, or slightly gets what he wants but not in the way that he wanted. For example, when he says he wants to live forever, so the wish takes him all the way back to the dawn of time so that he could then live forever. Of course, he's going to be faced with, depending on who you believe, millions or thousands of years with nothing. It's quite funny. I mean, Rincewind, as we know, is a fairly useless wizard, so his attempts to grant the wishes are not what's happening anyway. What's happening is there's a demon who is trying to tempt Eric to be bad because that's what demons do. But the demon doesn't have a great deal of success in himself either. But what I quite liked about the way the demon was working was that you have this idea of hell as like being punished with fire or sharp objects stuck in your body, and that sort of the destruction of the body post-death. Pratchett kind of is like, what would be the point of that? If you're dead, you've departed your body, the physical side of it would be pointless. So instead, the hell that this new demon has created is one of just like interminable waiting for pointless things like call centers and memos on productivity and the sort of stuff that just drive people to distraction. Is a torture of the soul. I actually really quite liked it. I actually think that Eric is really harshly done by the score. I think it's a really good book. Let me just have a quick look on the list. I think it's the 9th book. Yeah, that says it's the 9th book, the 4th following Rincewind. What I did when I started reading Pratchett was I started with Mort because that was the one that all my family told me was the best, and I picked that up and read that first, and I really, really loved it. And then I went back to 1 and worked my way through, and I was reading them all right up until the mid to late teens. The book that I stopped at was Soul Music, which is 16. After that, I have read some of the others. For a start, when we get to the best, it's a later book in the series, and I had read it before. So I read some of the others after that, but 1 to 16 I read like through, then after that, I just sort of, if somebody had one and they gave it to me, or they lent it to me, or they recommended it to me, then I read it. But I didn't actually seek any of the Discworld books out after 16. And most of the ones that I read after the Soul Music just reinforced the idea that I'd made the right decision to stop. That some of that magic had gone, that it was kind of a bit of a treadmill, really. And that's not to say that even if they were poorer by the Discworld standards, that they were bad books. It's just that they didn't quite have the same magic anymore. 16 books is an extremely long series. By my standards, I tend not to read, I tend to find after 2 or 3 the series is, losing some of that originality, and therefore I start to lose interest in it. So making it 16 books into the series is exceptional. But for me, the peak of the Discworld was that Mort through to sort of Reaper Man, which is 11, which would encompass Eric. If you were to say that 4 to 11 was Pratchett at his very best, then it would encompass Eric. And I actually think that would be fair. I think that Eric is really, really good. It's a lot of fun. I mean, maybe because I studied Faust at university, but I don't know, it's just something about it. It's not that close to the original text. It's just that basic, you'll get 3 wishes, that somebody's sort of making a play for your soul, and the 3 wishes don't turn out quite how you wanted them to. It's pretty much the only connection that I can remember to that original text anyway. So just have a quick look at what some of the people on Goodreads have said about it. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to do the extremes. So I'm going to... So even with the book in the series that's regarded as the worst, you can see the bulk of 3 and 4 stars, which is just because that's Goodreads. Most people just go, oh, yeah, it was good, 3 or 4. But even here, it's like, this is the worst of the Discworld books. 16,000 people gave it 5 stars and 800 gave it 1. So it's still heavily regarded as a pretty good book, I think. Let's have a look at some of the 5 stars. What a romp, and I mean that in the best possible way. Yeah, it is. It's possibly the shortness of it is a really slim volume. It must be the shortest one. It's only 155 pages in this edition, but it really does feel like it rips along. Like each one, perhaps each wish is a little episodic, jumping back and forth in time. There isn't really that flow, you might say, but at the same time, it has a real energy to it, I think. I think it's a great book. With a previous Discworld book, I managed to read it slowly. This one I read in one go. Both approaches stem from the same thing, pure enjoyment of the book I'm reading. I think that shortness of it does really help just sort of really get into it, feel that energy and the power. Short but hilarious. I love all the Terry Pratchett Discworld novels, this one included, even though it's quite short and at times reads a little like a YA book. I would agree with that. I actually did wonder if it wasn't part of the main Discworld series and was like Discworld for younger readers or something like that, because it did feel a little bit like it was a YA book at times. So yeah, I'd agree with that too. I might well agree with all of that, but I don't speak any Russian. Reread 2019. Rincewind becomes a demon and helps a horny teenage demonologist walk through hell and back. Yeah, a little bit of the hell and back, a little bit of Dante, I think. Not so much sure that Rincewind doesn't become a demon, but that would be, splitting hairs for the sake of it. He's mistaken for one by just pure coincidence and luck, really. Just happens to be in the right place that the charm that Eric casts picks him out. One long sequence of gags that manages to have several shrewd observations about humanity while still being funny each time I read it. Illustrated version was a nice touch. I didn't see the illustrated version of it, but yeah, I think that it's fair to say that it does have a little something to say about us, particularly that switch in hell, that the way we're going to, just does seem that we're almost creating things that are, well, they're cheap, but they're cheapening for humanity, like the painful call centers, like press 1 for this, like the proliferation in any employment situation of just worthless communication, which I have to say in the last 10 years has got worse and worse and worse. So Pratchett was well ahead of his time with this. I think bumbles his way. He does. Rincewind is generally incompetent. Nothing he really does works out well, apart from he says something along the lines of it's always best to be prepared to run, and it isn't important where to. You worry about that when you get there, and it's just important to be fleeing at any particular point, which I thought was quite good. And I definitely think that that's true. Yeah, he's very bumbling, but he also, there is a degree of almost shrewdness in that having a plan. My plan, I will make sure that I am ready to run at any particular moment, which in the Discworld, of course, is very, very, very good advice. Yeah, length of the novel is still an exhilarating read. So a lot of comments about the length of the novel, even saying when it's like 5 stars and really good. This is my first Pratchett. I heard so many good things. I had high expectations. Biting wit, whimsical characters, constant puns and allusions, and clever tricks. So fun. I would not say star with this one, but if you were younger, or if you had read Faust, I might, because it is so short. That does help, I think. Favourite Discworld, so far, yeah, why not? One of the things I say is like the idea that he's a hacker is not really, that really doesn't go anywhere. There's only really a few lines that he says that would sound similar to like something out of a hacking movie or something, but beyond that it's kind of tenuous. He's more just a little bit like Giles or something from Buffy, just trying stuff out of a book. Let's have a look at the 1 stars. Acne-ridden demonologist desires to bring forth a demon to grant him 3 wishes. A slightly better. They end up on a trans-dimensional journey. A slightly better and slightly funnier book in the series, which I don't really get. I don't get your review, my friend. Sorry. First foray into the Discworld, and I think it was a bad first choice. So it kind of like what I was just saying. Don't give up on the series, though. He says he's not going to, but don't. This novel was a bit silly. That perhaps is what I'm saying about YA, in that the Discworld kind of is a commentary on our world, but in this regard, the Eric spends more time in other places or other times. He's definitely not so much in Ankh-Morpork, so it's more like a silly romp than any sort of commentary on our world like the Discworld usually does. Like the insurance in the first book is all about like greed and stuff like that. It's like you can really see it as a commentary, whereas there's a bit less of that, I think, with this one. Short, flat and predictable, with jokes that never hit their mark. That's harsh. I think the jokes do generally hit their mark as frequently as they ever do with Pratchett. There's always going to be, you know, if you have thrown out 100 jokes, 50 of them here, that's a good ratio. They've churned out crap with a sprinkling of interesting, well-written books. That's really, really harsh. I mean, if you've read enough to say that somebody's churning out a lot of crap with just a sprinkling of good, then question whether you should have started. Because as with all humour, you know, people laugh at different things, like slapstick or not, or fart jokes or not. So if you've read like one Discworld book and you thought, I really didn't like that, then at most try another one. But if you don't like that one either, it's time to stop. To have read enough to say that I read loads, it's a load of crap, you just wasted your time, really, because it doesn't mean they're bad, it just means that you have a slightly different sense of humour, which is very reasonable. It's the only book by Sir Terry Pratchett that I didn't finish. That's a shame. I say the story are much weaker. I don't know about that because, and particularly not of his later work, because I think that the story here is very basic, but it's fairly prominent still. It is quite good. It seems like a lot of people don't really like Rincewind. Worst, and by a wide margin. The worst that I've read was probably Soul Music, which is probably why I stopped at that point. And this is nothing like as bad as that. It's just fun. It's like a few paid people commenting that almost like its shortness is a flaw. I don't agree with that, but it's interesting to see the people thinking that Victorian mindset is like, it's not a book's, you know, I'm paying a penny for this book, it better be this thick and worth it. No, I've never felt like that. I've always felt that just give me a story, and if it fits in a book this thick or that thick, then I'm okay with that. So I don't see really that the shortness is a weakness. I would think that dragging something out beyond the limit of the joke would be a weakness, which absolutely is not the case here. So another Pratchett book to hit that I do not like pile. This descended into pure farce, so there's absolutely nothing wrong with a good farce, and this is a good farce. Rincewind with his only reaction of run away. I was just talking about that, and Eric, who's a bit of a caricature. Yeah, like it's, when you have an older person writing about a younger person, there is a serious possibility that you will end up with just a mediocre caricature. Is something you really have to try to avoid, I think. But I think that actually, because Rincewind is by far the lead character, not Eric in this book, that it kind of gets away with it. Like the TV shows, didn't like the book. Horrible book. Pratchett is a wannabe Kurt Vonnegut and fails miserably. I don't agree that he's a wannabe Kurt Vonnegut. I think that their styles and their ideas are very different, and obviously the approach as well. So I think that's... Sorry, I don't agree with that. I just prefer books that don't mention Rincewind. That seems high. Bad place to begin the series. I definitely would agree with that, but not because it's a bad book, just because there are better places to start. For example, sometimes, people are like really into their films. I recommend Moving Pictures as a good place to start. But anything that's heavy on death in the early going, so Reaper Man or more, is a really good place to start as well. But I don't know, the first book is not that bad. If the first book was bad, then the series would not have got past 2 or 3. So the first book is a good place to start as well. But Eric, only if you're younger or you're a fan of Faust. Otherwise, yeah, it's probably not a great place to start. So let's move on to the best book that, as voted by Goodreads, which is Night Watch, which is the 29th book, which I have actually read, and I obviously have read these out of order once you get beyond song music. Let's just have a look at the blurb that it gives us. Don't put your trust in revolutions. They always come round again. That's a good pun. I'll give them that. That's good. That's why they're called revolutions. Doesn't need explaining. That's the point of it. Like, give your audience some credit. Don't put your trust in revolutions. They always come around again is enough. People die and nothing changes. So we're starting, like, we've got the sort of whimsical pun tied with a very serious statement there. I think that's kind of in keeping with the book, which has a real effort to try and have a pathos as well as ethos. For a policeman, there can be few worse things than a serial killer at loose in your city, except perhaps a serial killer who targets coppers, and a city on the brink of bloody revolution. The people have found their voice at last. The flag and barricades are rising, and the question for a policeman, an officer of the law, a defender of the peace is, are you with them or against them? And I just want to bring to your attention what it says on Terry Pratchett's website, which is, the Discworld books can be read in any order. So I think that's important, because for me, Night Watch, I think, is stronger if you have read all of the other books that deal with the City Watch, and I haven't. I've only read, if you go back to 16, you'll see that I've read, the first one I think was Guards, yeah, and then there was Men at Arms. Then there was something about Clay. Was that a Night City Watch? Yeah, Feet of Clay. I've read that one, but I don't think that I've read the ones after that, which are 4 and 5. So yeah, I haven't read Jingo, which is City Watch 4. These are not in any order, so it's hard to find. Yeah, so it says the 5th City Watch book is the 5th Element, and I haven't read 5th Elephant, and I haven't read that one either. And I think that might be important. And just before we go on, you can see that the Night Watch there is 4.48, just going back to what I was saying about how rare it is to go over 4.5. And it doesn't mean it's a good book either. It just means that it tends to have been mobbed by younger readers. The reason I think 4 and 5 might be important to read is that for Night Watch, there's the villain of the Night Watch, but book 6 is somebody called Casa, and he's built up and described quite repetitively, I felt in the same sort of way. It's like this sort of jovial character, like he's having a laugh with you, but he's still at the same time really, really dangerous. But in terms of what he brings to this book, he really is just on the periphery all the time, never quite having that significant an impact on anything, and never feeling particularly threatening. So I felt that actually he was quite a weak character, and I was surprised that this book was as high as it was because of that. I thought that they could have done more with him. I felt that he just flitted in and out and didn't really do anything, even when he was promoted to a position of power later in the book. Now, the other thing is that the City Watch, a group of them that have been around a while, have like a lilac flower on a certain day, which is obviously the anniversary of a really serious event, something that was really important in the city. And they go to like pay their respects to a bunch of gravestones and the people that obviously lost their lives at that event. And then what happens is Sam Vines, who's been in most of the, if not all of the, I think probably all of the City Watch, but like Sam read a couple of them, so I don't like to say for sure, that he is chasing Carcer through the unseen university, and there's like a weather storm and a bit of magic happens, and he takes him back in time to, obviously, you know, that event's going to play out. And I actually just felt that emotional impact at the start was really strong. You feel like there's going to be a really major event, something really powerful, something like maybe 10 people in a really tight situation, and only half of them got out. And that's what I was expecting with that emotional power of something like that. But when it actually plays out in the book, it's nothing like that at all. And it's a much grander scheme with a lot more people involved, so that some of these people that have come to pay their respects, who are figures we've known from other books like Cut My Own Throat, Dibbler and things like that, when they are there, you're kind of like, your involvement was negligible. I really don't understand why you're here. So I felt that it didn't quite tie the emotional impact that it promised at the start with what it gave at the end. So I didn't actually think that this book, and I'm not saying it's bad, it really is very good, but I didn't actually think that it quite was as good as some of the others, and I was really surprised to find that this was like the highest rated of all of the Discworld books. I really thought the Mort, I thought maybe the first one, I thought maybe Reaper Man, I thought Guards, the Weird Sisters and things like that, sort of the earlier stuff like that would have been the highest ranked. But I have to say as well, if you're talking about a series that peaked at book 29, that's extraordinary. There can't be many series that are that long, let alone peaking at that time. So that is absolutely incredible. There's a lot of good stuff in there, like when they're making a list of their demands, the revolution, Sam says something like, I want a boiled egg. And they're like, a boiled egg? What sort of demand is that to put in a manifesto? And he says, well, it's the one that you might actually get. So it's quite clever, it's quite funny, I do like it. It's a good book. Slightly surprised that it's as highly rated as that. So let's have a look at the 1 stars, see who dared criticise it, and you can see it's 63,000 5 stars to 600 1 star. That's huge. That's really impressive. I felt disappointed. I can't address why without revealing spoilers, and so this review will have several of them. Yeah, he did. It was a magical fluke, and then there's Carcer that didn't do much, and then it's an ineffectual villain, so he kind of saying what I was saying, but I'm going to skip through that review. Reading it felt gross, like drinking a warm can of sugary pop on a hot day in the desert. I don't think that would feel gross. I think that'd feel great, or at least better than nothing, but I don't get what you're saying there. I don't see how you don't back that up with any evidence. So that's it. I'm done for. I hope you mean I'm just done. If you're done for, rest in peace, young man. Rest in peace. Pratchett's humour is not for me, perfectly understandable. As I said earlier, perfectly understandable. I only seem to read 3% of the book. Is that really giving it a fair shout? Gave up 2/3 of the way through. That's better. Probably not a good choice if you haven't read the previous 28 books. That's what I'm saying. Perhaps, because I haven't read those other 2, that I'm not quite getting that oomph that other readers are getting. Hated it, don't like science fiction, didn't realise this book was in this genre. Well, I read it and I still don't realise this is science fiction. Science fiction. What are you giving it as science fiction? Time travel? It's most definitely fantasy. It's not science fiction. Kept waiting for something interesting to happen, but it never did. I just didn't get it. The jokes and humour, I'm sure I missed some of it. Okay. Brandon Sanderson recommended it. I don't know that Brandon Sanderson's famous for comedy, so I'm not sure why that would be a recommendation that you'd put a lot of store in. Didn't finish it. Life is too short. It was on the BBC 100 books list. Read a good portion though. It's good for you. At least you gave it a try. Yeah, he didn't like Narnia, Middle Earth, Lord of the Rings, Star Trek. Not going to do Discworld either. Okay, it's fair enough. A lot of biting political and social commentary embedded in a series of absurdities. Yeah, I would agree with that. But I think that they generally do work. And I think that there's certainly an element of truth to quite a lot of what is said in that politics. But it isn't excessively bashing you over the head. Like, it doesn't sort of say, like a lot of things, this is an analogy for Trump, and if you like Trump, you're evil. It doesn't do that sort of thing. The politics of it are kind of like, it would be nice if this works, but realistically, this is what you're going to get. So it's kind of that commentary. So I think it's okay. I didn't feel like it had a particular bias or an act to grind in any way that would bother me. I had a feeling that I missed a lot. That's the feeling that I think that I had from not having read those other books. So when they say that you can read any book, I think to really get the most out of this book, you probably do need to have read the others in the City Watch series at least. Didn't finish, hard time getting in. There's no chapters, that's true. It is just one entire story all the way through. I don't know if that's true of all of Pratchett's. Just have a quick look at Eric because I've got it here. Eric does have more defined breaks, but it doesn't have chapters either. Yeah, just not my thing. Fair enough. Awful. I think with a book that takes itself seriously, you can go, this is awful. With a comedy, it's much harder, I think. It's fairer to say, just not my sense of humour. Unless it's genuinely, it would have to be spectacularly bad. I don't think I've reviewed any comedies and said, awful. I would have just said, I didn't get it, or didn't like it. Other people probably will, that sort of thing. There's not enough one-star reviews to spend a great deal of time on them. So let's have a look at the more positive. My favourite Pratchett novel, but I'm not really sure why. I think Sam Vine's being in it definitely helps. I think my favourite Discworld books are the City Watch. Yeah, I think that they are strong, the City Watch ones. The ones that I read, like Guards and Men-at-Arms and stuff, were really, really good at the start of this series. And yeah, I think that Sam Vine's is a very likeable character. He's a little bit like Raymond Chandler said, in that he's the one honest guy in a city. But you can still make a bit of difference. So yeah, I can see why a lot of people would really like Sam Vine's for that reason. Probably the same reason that people have read Raymond Chandler for years. This was a reread, but it had been so long that I did not remember much of it at all. So it was like reading it for the first time. I wouldn't say that because I did remember quite a lot of it when I was reading it. I read it at the weekend. Vimes and Vetinari are good characters, and I think that the two of them will carry even a bad book, which this is most certainly not. So yeah, two of my favourite characters, definitely good choices. Adored the humour and wit, first book from Pratchett I've read. So you dove right in at book 29, and you still found that this one, without that support of the other City Watch books, you still said that this one was the best one. Okay. It's not laugh out loud funny the way some of the Pratchett books are, but it was good. It was darker. Yeah, I would agree with that. Give it 10 stars, I would, but it makes me rethink all of the other books that I've given 5 stars. Perhaps they don't deserve it. See, this one contradicts that previous review. It says unless you've read at least 3 of the previous Night Watch books. And it says start with Guards on Mort if you're starting here. That review is 13 years old. One of the best books in the Discworld revolves around Sam Vine's good example of the author's shift from slapstick comedy to a subtler form of humour and targeting real-world problems. Yeah. I agree with that. I would agree with that. I would say that Eric is sillier, by far sillier. But perhaps that's something that I just enjoy, like a bit of silliness, because I really liked Eric. I was surprised to see how much I enjoyed it. Justice, freedom, reasonably priced love, and hard-boiled egg. Yeah, they were pushing for free love. and as part of their manifesto, and naturally being Ankh-Morpork is a sizable amount of women of the night who are not keen on the free love part of it. I thought that was quite good. And the boiled egg thing was, I'm not going to say deep, but has something to say at least. She's got a picture there of the cover, which is the same cover that I've got. And I wonder if there is a Josh Kirby cover, because that cover is absolutely awful. I really dislike that. It's so bland and dull. It absolutely does no credit at all to sort of the vibrancy of the Discworld. I think that really, like, you'd be hard pushed to find anyone that suited the Discworld better than Josh Kirby's covers. They're just magnificent. They just go hand in hand with the book so well. This cover was just awful. This book reaffirmed my faith in Mr. Pratchett. It's a wonderful read full of pithy comments and hugely funny. Isn't the best place to start. Not because it'll be a bad impression, but because you just won't get as much out of it as a seasoned fan. So some people are saying that you do need to have read more into the Discworld, and some people are saying that you don't. Vimes being Sam Vine's favourite character, Sam Vines, so a lot of people really, and Vetinari as well. Vimes and Vetinari are getting a lot of comments, even this one, which is, I think, in Spanish. Still talking about Vimes. Hands down my favourite. Jingo comes in second. My new favourite. The best thing Sir Terry ever wrote. It speaks to me in ways nothing else did. I love this book. Every time I read it, it seems to get shorter, but I will say, this looks a bit of a doorstep compared to Eric, at least. But it's got quite sizable lettering, and I blitzed through it. I read it in a few days, which is very rare for me. I usually take a lot longer to get through a book than that. It doesn't feel long. That's definitely true. I think that there are a few people that have disliked Eric because it was short, or the shortness of it has made it feel more throwaway than some of the other books, which means I think that it's getting a slightly rawer deal than it might otherwise get. And I think that Night Watch, as a standalone book, which the Pratchett website says you can read any one in any order, remember, I think would score less than what it does. I think it does need that backup from the other books. I think Eric does as well. It would certainly help to have read The Colour of Magic, because then you'd have a better understanding of why the luggage is doing the things that it does. Yeah, I think you could enjoy them standalone, and I think that if I had to say to somebody which one would you start with, I probably would say Eric, because it's just a little bit more accessible to me. But I might be wrong, because the other books might not deal with Casa at all. They might not build up any part of that emotional resonance that I think that I'm thinking that they do for this book. I just think I would say Eric. It just has I read the first 16, so that early series energy, vibrancy, colour, zaniness that Night Watch doesn't have. But there's no doubt at all that Night Watch is a better written and more thoughtful and more interesting book. But that doesn't mean it's more fun. And I think that if most people pick up a Discworld book, it's a book about a flat earth riding on top of 4 elephants that in turn are standing on the top of a turtle. Zaniness, craziness, silliness, those are the sorts of things that I think that most people would expect from a Pratchett. Maybe I'm wrong, but I would recommend to a new starter Eric over Night Watch. But obviously, as I mentioned many times, Mort, Colour of Magic, Reaper Man, moving pictures if you're a film buff, that sort of thing would be my place to start. So I'm going to leave the video there. Hope it was interesting to you. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed it, like and subscribe, that sort of thing. And before I go, I just want a reminder that in terms of the book that I've written, I'm still looking for people that if you want to be involved as a test reader or a proofreader, then you should probably DM me on Twitter. I'll put my address here-ish, or just leave a comment to that effect contact in the comments of this video, and what I will do is I will put my email in there, but I might only put it in there for a little while because I don't want it lingering on the internet for too long, so that you can contact me and then I will get back to you and we'll just discuss how it's going to work between us away from the YouTube. So anyway, thanks again for watching. By all means, share your thoughts about which you think is the best and which you think is the worst of the Discworld series. And perhaps also for people that are new to the series or thinking about where to begin, what you would recommend as the first place to start in the Discworld series. I'll see you in the next video. Bye.